Hey, everybody. Now that we're getting ready to get started with the actual research for our papers, I wanted to take a few minutes and look at the research question and what the research question entails. This is a pretty critical step. Like I've said in class many times, really, if you can do the planning part well and you have a good handle on the planning part and you execute or you focus on that well, the writing becomes a lot easier because you have all the pieces in place, right, before you actually do the writing. And so, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the research question and what that is. So, I'm going to bring that up here and um, just talking about the research question and helping us get started here as this gets loaded. All right, so let's start with obviously the basic what is the research question? So, first off, this is the thing which will drive your research. So, this is the thing that you're trying to answer, right? And your research helps you answer that question. Okay, I know that sounds kind of obvious, but really it's all about what is it that I need to find first. Before I go out there, before I start searching, I have a very clear idea what it is I need. Now, if you can do this well, this will help you make sure that your searching is effective, that you're finding the right stuff, you're finding the stuff you need to write the paper that you want to write, and it helps you be more efficient because you can focus on the things that you really need to focus on. So, what are the elements of or the characteristics of a good research question? First off, it is clear. Okay, clear. We know exactly what it is we're looking for. It provides enough specific that one's audience can easily understand its purpose without needing additional explanation. In other words, I can look at your research question and I know what we are trying to accomplish. I know what we're trying to answer. I know what we're going to be focused on. It's kind of like the thesis statement in our paper when you say, this is what we're going to be talking about. The research questions, this is what we're researching. This is what we're trying to find. So we start off with a statement that is, or a question that is very clear. Then we need to be very focused. Now, this is a little bit, we have to be a little bit careful with this because it's narrow enough that we can actually answer it, right? We want to, we have a certain amount of space that we're going to be writing. We have a research question that's focused enough that I will be able to answer that question in this amount of space. Now, we don't want it to be too focused in that it's too simplistic or it's too easy or we really haven't got to the heart of the problem yet, but we don't want to be too broad because we only have a certain amount of space to write. Okay. So if it would take thousands of words to answer the question, it's probably too big. It should be very concise. And by concise, we're looking at using a very specific amount of words, a very kind of an economy of words, if you will, by keeping it simple and keeping it worded directly to what we're trying to ask. Then, and I know this sounds counterintuitive because we just said it has to be focused, right? So it's narrowed down to something very specific, but we don't want it to be so simple that it's a yes or no. We don't want it to be so simple that I can do a little bit of research and I can just answer this question because it does involve you looking at the information, analyzing what you find, synthesizing information, and creating an answer, right? It's not just, here's a question, so and so says this, and we're done. Complex means that we have it narrowed down to a specific topic, some specific pieces about that topic, but that we are in a place where we can really kind of dig into it and try to find some information about it, and we can kind of explain what that is and what we mean by that. And then finally, it needs to be arguable. And we talked about this in class. It needs to be something that is open to debate, that people would have an opinion on it. People can have an opinion that can be changed on it or reinforced. And it's not something that we already all agree on, right? If the majority of people already agree on something, it's probably not arguable. All right. Now, why do we need to do this? So, again, I think I said earlier, it kind of helps make your work efficient and effective, right? Research questions help focus the research onto a particular path. Okay. So, in other words, before we start, we know what we're looking for, we know where we're going, and we know how we're going to do it. Instead of just, I'm going to write about blank, and I go to Google and start typing stuff in. The research question helps make a path. It says, here's what we need to try to find. The specificity of a well developed research question helps writers avoid the all about. In other words, later start times for schools. And we're just talking about what time school starts. We don't really get anywhere. What are we trying to accomplish, right? Why is this important? What do people say about it? What do I think about it? And how does it, what is the benefit of that? And what would it take to accomplish something like that? So, in other words, it's really essential because it puts you on the right path. It gives you a way or a method to do things. And it really helps you create a paper, helps you gather information to write a paper that is worth reading. Okay, that is worth reading. That is something that people can get something out of. All right, so let's talk about the steps to write the research question. First off, choose the interesting topic. We've already done that. We started off with gathering all the different ideas that we could come up with. We narrowed it down to 3, then we narrowed it down to 1. So we start with a topic that we're interested in, right? Now, it should be broad enough that it's something that you want to know more about, that there is stuff to discover, okay? But we want it to be something that we want to be engaged with. Then we're going to do some basic research. And we've done that already, right? When we went from all these to 3, then we did that exploration. We just went out there, just started to see what's out there. That was the purpose of this because it kind of helps us see what we know and what we don't know. And so already we're well on our path, right? But this just lets you see what's out there. What are people saying? Is there enough information out there? Is this something that's arguable? Is this something that I can deal with? It really helps you see that. And then it helps you discover, like, okay, if I'm going to write about this, what am I going to have to learn? Step 3 then is start to consider your audience. Now, generally speaking, the audience, and for the purpose of this assignment, it is oftentimes your peers, the people around you. It's your teacher, it's your fellow classmates. Generally, those are the people that the paper is geared for. But it could be anybody, right? As long as you can kind of focus that and say, okay, here's who I believe would be reading this paper, who might be interested in reading this paper, then I create a message specifically for them. Now, why that's important is because then we start to use language and examples and rhetoric that is applicable to them. I would speak differently to a group of teachers than I would to a bunch of students on a topic about starting school later. It's not that my position changes, but it's just that my language, my word choice, my examples, all those will be different because it's a different type of audience. Step 4, then we start asking questions. These are these kind of, open-ended. Why is this the way it is? How could it be changed? Where would I need to start thinking about this to make a difference, right? Um, so what we want to do then is we want to take the topic, right? But then we want to expand on it in a way that allows us to analyze the topic, analyze the information. Um, and then once we take these questions, then we start to narrow it down and we create this statement that, well, I should say it's a question. It's more of a question, but we create this question then that we can use as our guide for our research. But after we've done that, then we need to really start thinking about, is this the best question to answer, right? We might have to finesse this, we might have to adjust it a little bit, but this is the job of this pre-writing, is to get it right to start with so that when we go out and do the research, we have the ability to be successful. Some questions you might ask yourself: is this clear? Obviously, we already talked about that, about the fact that we need to, you need to know what you're looking for, and somebody else who picked it up would say, okay, here's what we're going to be talking about. Is the research question focused? And again, does it narrow down on something specific? And is it broad enough? And I know those are counterintuitive. Is it narrowed down on something specific, but does it allow us to really do that kind of research? And then finally, we're going to take that and we're going to use it to start doing our research to answer these specific kinds of questions. So let's take a look at some samples here. How should social networking sites address the harm they cause? It's kind of an unclear statement because what are we talking about, right? What are we really talking about? So if we look at something that's a little clearer, what actions should social networking sites like MySpace and Facebook take to protect users' personal information and privacy? You like that there? We went old school with the MySpace, right? But the idea that we went from how should they address it to what action should they take? So instead of, well, the first one, is it an action? Is it a thought? Is it a law? Is it whatever? No, okay, we're looking for an action. Now, who is going to take that action? You said social networking sites. Who are we talking about? We're talking people like Facebook and MySpace, these places that kind of in that general microblogging kind of platform, right? And then harm that they cause. What kind of harm are we talking about? Oh, we're talking about personal privacy and what it takes to protect that. So, in other words, I don't think that the first statement is bad, but it's just not really clear what you want to focus on. Now, by clarifying that, we know, okay, we're looking for steps that platforms can take to protect these kinds of things. Now, could it be what actions should social networking sites to protect young users? Great, whatever. But we're focusing it down. We're kind of making it very clear as to what we're looking at. Let's look at another example here. What is the effect on the environment from global warming? That is so broad, right? Because the effect, like what are the effect, right? Like how many effects are there out there? And then we're talking about on the environment. What about the environment? What do we really want to look at here? So we focus it down. What is the most significant effect of global melting on the lives of penguins in Antarctica? So what we're doing is we're talking about global warming. Okay, now we're specifically looking at when this gets warm, it makes the ice melt. So we're focusing it down on this thing, right? It's not sea level change. It's not rise in temperatures. We're looking at specifically ice melt. And then we're looking at penguins in the Antarctica, right? And so now we're not talking about the polar bears or indigenous people or whatever. We're being very specific as what we're looking for. We're focusing it down. And again, remember, the goal now is we know what we're looking for. We're looking for what happens when ice melts. Who is it about? Who's dealing with that ice melt? The penguins, right? And so we're very clear and we're very focused on specific pieces. And then finally, example number 3, how are doctors addressing diabetes in the United States? And again, this one is just the statement is so simple, we don't really know where to start, right? And it really lacks a lot of where are we going to go with this, right? What can we do? So, what main environmental, behavioral, and genetic factors predict whether Americans will develop diabetes? And how can these commonalities be used to aid the medical community in preventing the prevention of disease? I know it's a big mouthful and that's a lot of big words, but think about what it says here. We're looking for what in our environment causes diabetes. Okay, so now we're looking at the causes. And then we're saying, okay, now medical professionals, they see those. What can they do to prevent? By looking at these things in the environment, what can we do to prevent the disease, cause and effect, right? Now we have, and again, notice a doctor's addressing diabetes. That's very broad, right? It's so unfocused. It's too simple, right? Complex now we have, what are we going to do? Cause and effect. What are we looking at? How are we going to put these things together, right? So what we want to do is we want to be able to take our research question. We want to be able to take all the information that we have. We want to be able to boil it down to something specific, focused, narrow, clear, yet a little bit complex. It allows us to do some research and then use that as our guide for our research. Again, I really believe, and I've said it many times before, if you can do the pre-writing part right, if you can get a good solid plan and then work it, you should be able to make the writing process a lot easier for you. So again, please make sure that you are thinking about what you are trying to address so that we know exactly what we're trying to research. Good luck.